raise a question, or you raise a question today? When that comes up.
Let's begin. It's 2:00. Call the meeting to order. And understand that Peter's not going to be joining us today. But we have a quorum, so on we go. Second are the minutes from the last meeting on September 29. Does anybody have any comments on those minutes?
Everything that I remember is, this looks like the meeting.
Right. Okay, could I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll do that.
From Greg? Second from Sean. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, good. Well, status report?
All right, what I'd like you to do in the report, you have this is just a one pager here that because of the government shutdown, we're now a month and a half out of date. The only well that we have is Goat Hill. And so I put some information about Goat Hill, but we can't make, that without having the other items, we can't go too far. But this will, I think, start that, I put this together to explain where that well is right now. Right now, we have the wells on a D1 moderate drought condition, and at the end of this, we should decide whether or not we want to continue that and why it may be problematic. And the voluntary restrictions are from the water drought write-up. The rationale, right now, the New York State DEC, they put us into a watch level, which is their first warning level. And that's been true for the last 3 or 4 meetings, I think. The Regional Northeast Drought Early Warning System, that's the DEWS, they have on October 7, they changed the drought intensity. They downgraded us down from abnormally dry to moderate drought. So that was a negative event there. I didn't do the picture because I think we all know the picture looks like. It is all of Suffolk County, the southern length of Connecticut. They did that. They changed that as well to the moderate drought. The aquifer height well readings, due to the federal shutdown, we only have one set of data, which is Goat Hill, and that's automated. So what I did was I took, and on the back of the page that's in the write-up, this is the same well, 2 different time frames. The lower time frame is June to November 19. And what that just shows you that, and this is not percentile numbers, this is the raw data. And you can see how it ran down June, in August, and the big start of September. We didn't have that gap there, is the equipment was malfunctioning. We did not get any information out of it. And then the squiggle that's on the right side of that lower chart is blown up on the top of the piece. And what I'm thinking that I'm seeing is that we have now basically reached the bottom of the bottom of the drawdown period. We did get some rain, not a huge amount of rain since then. But that's what this looks like. We've looked at it, I think, somewhat, but is there any questions? You got any questions on that? I'm thinking that the chairman must have a few questions, or he has notes anyway.
So just so that I understand the presentation.
Sure.
The chart on the top is a magnification of basically the September 2025 to present, right?
Through October, yes.
October, okay. Comments from anyone? Questions?
This being the only piece of
Yeah.
well data we have, I think it puts us in a different, well, also, I forgot to say that I was able to calculate the percentile reading. It's right now it's in the 35th percentile. It was 15, it's down, it dropped 2 percentile points. It's just a huge drop, I think. If you look at the way.
Wait a minute, it's at what percentile? It's at the 35th?
No, 13th.
13th, that's what I thought.
If I said that wrong, I apologize. And, when you look at what's happening in the close-up, I mean, the values go up, they constantly back around. So that bounce up and down. The fact that this is 13, 2 days, a day earlier, it might have been 15, and because there is that slight change. So that's it for, that's the skinny, which again, not having the numbers, it's about as far as we can go.
And where are we on rainfall? Do we know?
I did take the time out. There's the Weather Underground. I don't know if you're familiar with them. I have taken, there's about 4 or 5 reasonably well-functioning units that are around on the island. And basically, we had excuse me, now I gotta think about this. We had from September, when the unit came back on board, through October, I got us down at about 4.25. It's basically 4.25. Again, above and below. Different sites get different values, which I think is a function of, where the tree, when the tree blocks it, it drops it quicker, and then when it gets to the unit.
4.25 inches during
September. From when we started to take September and October 19.
How many weeks?
And just to let you know, there is now there is a new well that has been installed at the West Neck Water District. Asked for an automated well, and that's working now. But I'll pass this around. I didn't make copies because I don't think that that is, a long range. And this is an explosion of that, an expansion of that range. I think that's like 3 inches on the second piece. It's bouncing up and down half a foot. And why that would be, I don't know. That's something I think that we'll bring up. I think that the West Neck Water District requested this to be put into the system. So they were curious as to how things were going to be working. The unit, it's the same as our regular, it's taking readings every, 4 times a day. Is that right? No, wait. No, it's every half hour right now. So.
You know where that is? How's that in relation to Goat Hill?
It is slightly lower than ours. The numbers on the chart, if you ever look, if you have some other reason to look at it, you have to be careful at this point. If we put this into the mix, you have to adjust the number by according to which ground level, right? Those numbers are on the 88, and we usually use the 92, I guess it is. And you have to add 0.94.
Okay. So
I would think that given the fact that we don't, the only thing that you might make you say, huh? And that we might want to increase our warning level would be that it went from abnormal, or the DEWS number went from abnormally dry to moderate drought. The fact that we don't have the other three wells, the fact that what we do have seems like it's leveling out, and that we would probably want to stay where we are, since there's no reason to say that things are better than they were at the last meeting or the last result. So I would just, maintain the existing moderate drought status for the town, and follow the regulations that are in that category.
So we are at voluntary restrictions on outdoor water use during the day.
I believe that is correct. That is correct. Let me confirm.
Yep, that's where we are.
And is there anybody who thinks we ought to change that?
I think the fact that it's voluntary and it's just people that care should care about what the water is. And especially those who are like really interested in getting the bottles and finding out how much salt's in their well.
All right. So following our process, every month we're going to explicitly declare where we are. So can I have a motion to stay with our current guidance?
Motion to stay in the existing recommendation with no change this month.
Second.
Okay,
And I would second that if then we need one.
and thinking of Meg's guidance that we be explicit about our reasoning. Reasoning is that we have no information to believe that the situation on the island has deteriorated.
That would be correct.
No data to
Or
support.
gotten worse.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we seem to, very much if you look at the way the tighter chart on the well from September, I mean, it's level basically. It's very slightly tipped upward, although the last values, it seemed like it started to bump up a little.
And if anything, the regional declarations have caught up to us essentially.
That's correct. I hadn't thought of it that way.
We were a little early because we were where we are, or our heightened sense. They
Yeah.
kind of see what we see.
Okay, anything more on this topic?
Yeah. Maybe it's budget later on, but I was talking with Greg about twisting USGS's arm, automate the remaining big four.
Okay, let's
That's
take
where-
that up with the
Yeah,
budget.
because we're, just like we said, we have no data.
We're flying
We
blind.
rely on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
We said we'd take comments from the public before gaveling that.
that's actually a good point. Does anybody who's attending the meeting on Zoom or in person have any comments about that topic? Okay,
The recommendation.
Oh, yeah.
okay, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, next on the agenda. Thank you, Greg. Joe Fenora, I see at least your name on the screen, so I assume there's a Joe Fenora behind that name. You're next up with an update on the USGS 10-year baseline study. And could you take us through the proposal that we've received from the USGS? The cost, which is $240,000 over 3 years, 69,000 in the first year, which is a multiple of what we were expecting. And the reasons for that, and if there's anything that can be done to reduce that cost, and kind of where we are in the back and forth with USGS.
Sure. Yeah, I'm the man behind the curtain here, but I am here. And so there's a few major components to this work with USGS. We've solicited a proposal, and the fundamental approach is to duplicate as much as possible as our previous efforts. We've have a history now of about every decade renewing a study with USGS, United States Geological Survey, to understand both our quality and quantity issues. Over the previous few efforts, we have crafted the message a little differently with a focus on certain constituents or a slight move in the direction of what issues may be more confrontational in that period. For instance, the last 10-year review cycle revealed an emphasis on nitrate contamination. In fact, the results of that study are what ultimately produced that heat map of the center area that we used subsequently to drive policy and investigations towards nitrate issues in the center. And so this proposal that we've solicited from USGS has the same foundational approach of utilizing the USGS well network for sampling. What we are manipulating and what we have some room as a variable to change or influence the price is how many new constituents that we're adding and what kind of deliverable we get from USGS in terms of the results being packaged up and published and disseminated. So the changes in price are largely the increase in cost of the same things we've done before, but also the consideration of adding an emerging contaminant panel that includes things like PFOS, PFOA, some other elements like 1,4-dioxane, some pesticides. We don't get to largely pick what's on the list. They offer these set panels, and so what's on the panel is all inclusive. We're working with them to understand the benefits of selecting these new panels, but largely we're trying to make this a comprehensive study that answers us basic questions like where are we relative to 10 years before and the 10 years before that. But it's also an important opportunity to consider things that have changed in the water quality world since we last did this. Emerging contaminants is one of those, pharmaceuticals is one of those, and that's why they're up for consideration in this proposal. We have hard numbers. We have a hard proposal before us that Andrew has used for budgeting purposes with the town board. But this is not an executed proposal, so it's certainly open to feedback. And unfortunately, we're not able to do that at the moment with USGS because of the federal government closure. So that's not necessarily a long-term issue, but it does hamper our ability to work with them, more expediently. So do you guys have the proposal? Have you seen it? Is that handy, Andrew?
You gave me a copy when I came in last week. I don't know if
Okay.
it's been,
Yeah, it came around electronically.
Yes, early September, I think.
fine.
Okay, so the big number, for discussion purposes is $240,000 over 3 years. And so that's and it's equally distributed. No, I'm sorry, it's not equally distributed. It's 71,500 in the first year, 51,000 for the second year, and 48,500 for the third year. 4 years. I'm sorry, 4 years. I forgot to scroll. 69,000, 71,000, 51,000, and then 48,000. And that brings it to the total of 240,000. So it's a 4-year total effort. And I don't have the number handy for our previous one, but I know you mentioned it, Andrew, as substantially lower. Let me pull up that that value. And maybe, do you have that number handy for the previous one?
I don't, I just,
I don't either.
I don't either, because I actually don't have that proposal because it predates my time here. I had a document someplace with the budget expenditure, but yeah, I'll have to distribute that to you guys later. I don't have that number.
You know, Joe, that's one of the things I thought of is that we should really, because I have received that report 10 years ago, God knows where it is now. Maybe they could send that report in to us when they come back to work so that we can, unless maybe, maybe Meg's got one,
It
but
was 30,000 was how much we paid for the first one.
yeah. I'd like to see what we get for the 48,000 as well, you know, that's interpretation thing. We should see what the prototype, what the example would be of what that portion of the project is.
okay.
30
Meg, you
the whole
said
project?
the whole thing was 30,000, which is now 240?
Because we're doing a significantly different panel.
What's the apple to apple number?
Yeah, I guess
Well,
that's
also, another cost driver. So there's the inflation of the costs for the same panels. There's the addition of the new panels. And then the third primary cost driver is that the USGS is not disseminating results simply as results anymore. They must at minimum come with some level of interpretive reporting. And there are a few options for that. They range from a full-blown published peer-reviewed report to a synopsis and summary of the results. But we didn't do that, and we didn't have to do that last time. So there's a substantial administrative and report processing component to this go around. That's new policy from USGS that didn't exist the last time we did it.
So of this 240, assuming we want to get the emerging contaminant panels, how much is optional?
Well, I'm looking at the interpretive results options here. So that alone is 48,500, and that's a fixed cost regardless of whether you include the extra panels or not. So there's nearly 50,000 right there. That's a difference in the scope, which is non-negotiable from the previous go around. The costs without the PFAS and 1,4-dioxane are approximately $40,000 alone. So if we were looking at 240 with the PFAS and 1,4-dioxane panels, we'd be looking at 200 without them.
Okay, but assuming we want those panels, is there any way to reduce the 240?
Not in a meaningful way. We talked about trying to find some other laboratories that could contract out for the more simple testing to see if we could get more competitive rates. But anything that we could do to meaningfully reduce the cost would be substantially out of the box and perhaps not worth exploring further. I don't think we have the means and the expertise to to manage finding a new laboratory, things like that. USGS would still have to oversee a lot of that because they'd have to approve the laboratory procedures and certification. So anyway, long story short, we looked into that and it doesn't seem like that's a reasonable option. It's simply about if you want to cut the scope by reducing the number of panels.
That's the only choice.
There is an angle that you can reduce the sampling period, do it over a shorter period of time, but that comes at the expense and perhaps compromising the legitimacy of the study if you're not taking as many samples over as long a period of time, or maybe not from as many sample wells as before. Then you're introducing a new variable by not being consistent with your collection process. So that's something that you can do to reduce cost, but it sort of violates the fundamental principle of duplicity between the previous studies.
That was like, I think my starting question, which I think I put in an email at one point, was how does the testing compare to, say, hiring somebody privately, even knowing we want continuity with USGS, that we know that their labs are superior? And it sounds like basically, Joe, you've kind of done that inquiry. I just suggest if we're putting a request in front of the town board for these dollar amounts, that it be accompanied by essentially that due diligence, a lot of which you've stated, Joe, of how can we rationalize these costs? We've looked at it, we looked at private, we looked at this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just to show that we've answered those kind of natural questions in a, meaningfully transparent way. I guess the only thing that otherwise jumps out at me without going through it with a fine-tooth comb again is the $50K that they're adding now as a mandatory interpretation. How much of that is duplicative to, we're already asking for a summary and analysis? And so they're going to give us their standard summary and analysis interpretation, and then they're going to give us it in a different way, but saying a lot of the same things, and, or what is if that makes sense.
It does, yeah. So the deliverables are much more substantial for the $50,000. The only documents that I've seen meaningfully from the previous effort are PowerPoint slides where they presented summaries of results. They they tabulated them and graphed them in different ways, but there was no substantial reporting effort that could be disseminated amongst the community. It was almost exclusively done verbally and visually with summary tables. So this time around would include more sizable written documents, and at some level, you could even pursue peer-reviewed publications. I don't believe that the higher end of that is something that we need. So my recommendation is to go as light on this as possible. It's still a sizable increase in the deliverable from last time, but it's also obligatory with them. So I would look to do the lowest cost version of that as possible in this go round.
But that's the 240, right?
That's the cost for the reporting is in that 240, and it
you
represents about $50,000.
Right, and you're saying that's mandatory.
That's mandatory. Yep. That is the lower level reporting. We didn't ask for peer reviewed
Yep.
publications.
So if we hadn't done a study in 2016, if we didn't have this history with them, and we wanted this data, where would we get it? And what would it cost? And presuming that when we get the data, we, or particularly you, Joe, are savvy enough with the results to be able to understand what they mean for us. I mean, would we do something different? And if so, what would it be?
Well, I keep in mind, USGS collects these samples from their wells, so they also have the vehicle, to access the locations and the water at those precise well casings. We would not be able to duplicate that in the same way. You can test these panels privately at a laboratory, but they're expensive as well. I reviewed the costs for, for instance, a PFAS panel, and they're actually, for the most part, cheaper on a per constituent level than if we were to do this privately. The costs are substantial when dealing with USGS because the panel is so many other constituents. So we could not do the same constituents privately for the same price. We also don't have the mechanism to collect these samples like they do because we don't have access to the same well network. We haven't explored asking them to use their well network, but I'm not aware of any time in the past that they've allowed that kind of collaboration. I know sometimes they share wells with other government agencies, but I'm not aware of any time they've done it with like a local municipality. So to answer your question about how could we do this, I don't think that we would be in a position to do the same thing. I think what we're discussing in other agenda items about saltwater intrusion sampling, nitrate sampling in the center, that's kind of the extent of our capabilities as a municipality. And while the $48,000 for interpretation is an added cost, I actually think that's one of the greatest value adds that you perhaps otherwise wouldn't spend the money on if you didn't have to. These guys are the experts, and I very much want to know what they think of this data. I think that's a lot of what you're paying for, and I think it's a huge advantage to have that this go around.
Can I jump in at some point?
Yeah, sure.
I was wondering if the sampling protocol is multiple samples from the same well over a number of years, how much precision are we getting from that? And do we need that precision to make some judgments? In other words, we're getting a high definition picture. Do we need a high definition picture when a snapshot will tell us something, but not perhaps to the finest point? And if that would substantially reduce the cost. If it doesn't, then let's go with the high definition. Do you have any feeling, Joe?
Yeah, that's actually one of the outstanding questions that I have for them on this proposal is what can we do to the sampling procedure to shorten it? Whether it be, and do we have to do it for 3 years of sampling? What are their feelings on that, and what are their feelings as to the legitimacy of the impact to the legitimacy of the study? And so I don't have an answer for that, but it's a question that we want to know.
You asked it. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, and what then I think naturally that flows from that is then what is the variability of price in total? Does the 50K stay, whether it's 1 year or 3 years worth of data? What moves up and down, and then at least we'd have a better sense of what the decision we're making. And if they say we can do a 1 year study and the price goes down 20%, you're like, what?
Yeah.
Right.
You gotta get,
You
have to have the answer on that.
It might make sense to do that first year, and the second year would be depending on what the numbers look like. If what winds up, and say, okay, we have this well and now, and this well 10 years ago, and if you look at 7 or 8 of those wells, and you say, well, there's no
meaningful change or something.
This
Yeah.
doesn't work. Because I think we have to think that doing this sort of study is probably going to happen a lot in our future when we're 50 years from now, they still might be worrying about what's in the water today. So we should make sure that whatever we do makes sense for the longer run and not just this cycle, if you will, I think.
I'm just wrestling with an 8 times increase.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree, and that's,
I usually
I can
think, okay,
take in what Joe is saying verbally, and I hate to kind of make work, so to speak, but I think essentially a 1-pager or whatever in the bid that says, like, this is the due diligence, we looked at costs, here's that they're saying for a test, if you go to a private person, it's this. And then, given some of that, either the costs are not lower or they're within the range, but you're losing continuity of using USGS. We don't know if we can have access to their wells. I think we have to show that somewhere, that at least I do, rather than just having the conversation here, because I think the town board is going to be looking at their budget, and somebody who doesn't know anything about this is going to say, tell me more about that. You can say, we did our due diligence. We're trying to figure out whether it makes, sense in the long term.
But yes. I would also like to see, and I'd like to see the deliverable from 10 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, that's on
And
the,
then I'd like to really understand the deliverable this time. Because yes, there are going to be different panels tested. Yes, there's going to be different level of interpretation and guidance. What does that exactly look like? And what decisions is it going to help us make? Because that's ultimately why we're doing this. You know, what, the information only has to be good enough for the decisions you're making.
Yes.
Yes, it has to be, you have to anticipate that in the future, you're going to refer back to it. So you don't want to take like shortcuts that are going to compromise its future usefulness. But I'm just really balking at an 8 times increase. And, you know, maybe it's part of a USGS policy change to become more of a consulting operation and push those costs, push their costs onto the client, their client communities, as opposed to continuing to absorb their costs. That we may be on the receiving end of a shift in federal policy on that. I don't know, but an 8 times increase? Gordon?
The 2016 test that you had, was it 4 years like this one is?
It was multiple years. I don't know if it was
3
4.
3 years.
Yeah.
It was 3
3 years,
years.
and this one is 4.
Well, because the last year is their written analysis.
Right.
So the testing is 3
Testing is 3 years.
and the last year is the
We're
written.
comparing apples to apples.
Right.
They're really pulling the samples for 2 years, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
They're pulling 7, they're doing 8 wells 1 year, 7 wells the next year.
And that's what we did 10 years ago.
right.
And then what's the third year? Just
See, this is why, look, they're a government agency. They could be a consulting firm, whatever. They've got overhead. Okay? We're coming along, we need their access to their well network. We need access to this information. We need their interpretive skills. What they charge for that is what we're dealing with.
yeah.
But if they have 15, 20, 50 communities around they're doing, and they are encouraged, okay, to sell their services as opposed to give them away, that may be what's going on here.
Let me twist this a little bit for the people who, in 10 years now, who are going to be sitting around the table. How much are they going to praise us for getting a really high definition number when their data, which they're getting right then and there 10 years from now, do they really care? They have to deal with what they're going to have 10 years from now. And where it was now doesn't really impact that decision if it's terrible. I mean, if they have a problem 10 years from now, they're going to solve that problem. Not saying, oh, well, we were good back 10 years ago and now we're behind the 8 ball. They're still going to be behind the 8 ball. So how much is it worth spending all the money now to give them that information in 10 years? The comparison baseline. They're behind the 8 ball. So maybe that's.
But aren't you in that kind of thought process presuming that the data doesn't lead to changes or modifications in our approach to water that then, I mean, that's the goal, that's the reason you do it, not just to have information and say like, right? I mean, it could be.
That's why I'm arguing for a snapshot, not a high
Yeah,
definition.
no, so it sounds like we could do this for quite a while. To me, it sounds like we need to prove that we're doing our due diligence on rationalizing the cost. What are those questions, some of which Joe has clearly already made inquiries because he's appropriately thinking the same thing as we are? And what are some of the natural questions that we have for USGS when they come back? Could we have access to their wells ever? So that's an option. You know, I don't remember, I did read the proposal. Do we literally get no significant feedback until year 4, or are we getting little summaries after each year that give us a sense of what's going on? What are the costs associated with doing only 1 year or 2 years, and how much do they decrease? I think we don't make it inordinately painful, but like I think given the size of the number, that due diligence is kind of required as fiduciaries of sorts, right?
So how do we want to leave this? Because there are enough questions here around the table. Are we recommending it? Or, I mean, I've been in favor of doing this to continue the pattern of
Yes.
having the baseline. But all of those words were premised on a $75,000 3-year study, $20,000, $30,000 a year. This is 4 times that.
I mean, for me, it is, I'm still recommending it, but subject to due diligence. And the only problem with that is we don't know how long USGS is going to be offline, and how do we stay in the budget queue with a placeholder number, regardless that we're still doing our due diligence. And I'm not sure we can prevent that, just being what it is. But, I would say yes to all of that. Ideally, we'd like to stay in the budget queue in some way, shape, or form, but it's subject to more due diligence.
And I think building on your point, though, is what is not a budget topic here is the information really going to allow us to make some changes to how we operate and what decisions we make? Is it going to provide that information? If you can get that for $50 or $240,000, are you going to get, is it going to be valuable in saying, here, this drives this decision? I think that's what you were saying, and I would agree with it fully.
I mean, if you compare this to the testing we're doing on individual wells, which is kind of the functional reality of what people are drinking. I understand that they're 2 completely different sources of information. The well testing is affected by your septic tank, your neighbor's septic tank, all of these kind of micro impacts. This USGS testing, and these are deeper wells, they're further away from direct surface contamination. They're giving you a sense of the underlying health of the aquifer. Those are 2 different questions. The first, we're doing a whole lot of wells for $25,000. The second, we got a proposal for $240,000. Okay, Joe, I would like to see the 2000, and I'm embarrassed I haven't read it, the 2016 study. I'd like to read that, and I'd like to understand exactly how this is going to be different, other than just the contaminants being analyzed.
Yeah, I would actually propose that we invite USGS in to talk with the committee about these things directly. I'm happy to be the go-between, but they've offered to discuss this with us, and so we should take advantage of that.
Okay, so when they get back from the shutdown, that's fine. Let's have them in.
Absolutely.
It would be beneficial to have the previous information package of what came out of the previous test, to have that in hand before we sit down and talk to them, I think.
Okay, so
So just lastly, I think that's a very fair question. Maybe I didn't think about it in the same way of our testing, whatever number of these wells are that are more centrally located, are you getting diluted information because they're not near anything? And can you draw reasonable conclusions from that data of what actual experiences are in local, areas.
Okay, so review the 2016 report. Have them come in here and focus them on that question, or one of several. It's going to be, what exactly are we getting in terms of information, and why is it worth $240,000? Not what it costs to get it.
Yeah.
Understand that, but why is it worth $240,000 for us?
Yeah.
Okay, Joe, assuming the shutdown is over, do you think you can get them here for the November meeting?
Yeah, I think so. And I'll coordinate with you guys and let you know along the way if we're running into any problems with that.
And then why don't we try maybe offline to just contribute our questions of sorts so that they come with a sense of, ideally those same questions, even if it's not exact numbers of, do you ever give people access to your wells? Do you give, some feedback after year one? What if we only did 1 year? Like, some of that kind of stuff.
So, and Joe, tell them that the 4 people on Shelter Island who ought to be really in favor of doing this are really balking at the price.
Just 4.
Right, I mean, the 4, well, okay, Meg, sorry, 5.
And probably go ahead.
So Meg's got her hand up.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. The first one is my understanding of the reason for doing this 10-year study is to see if there's a notable trend in the increase of contaminants in the groundwater, right? So if we do it every decade, we'll know if there's an upward climb. We suspect there is based on recent results. There's a couple things we can do. We can leave it zeroed out in the budget this year, but keep the placeholder in the budget. If we come to the understanding that we do want to try to move forward with the study, we can approach WQI and see if they would approve funding through their WQI program. Because it's very similar to the other study that they've already approved, there is a likelihood that they may approve the funding for this as well. So wouldn't be necessarily out of the tax base, which is fine, but it would get us the data. So that's something to consider. We did talk to Suffolk County about doing the testing, and that is very complicated with a lot of legal issues. And to have USGS work with the Suffolk County to do the water testing is very complicated. So it's kind of off the table. So we did look into that, and we went and talked to them about it. So yeah, those were just the few things I had.
So I would just say we should ideally progress that conversation with WQI now, even if it's a preliminary, do they feel it's within their remit, this type of project? Are they looking at it favorably? All of that, because that can happen in the interim, so we're not cold on that. And then my other question, just because that comes up, is the 25K that we were doing for the town. I guess the question is, so where we have it in our budget, but where does it sit? Because if the lawyer says WQI funds can be used on it and the town approves it, it comes out of the budget, and that makes it feel a lot better. So, kind of where are these all in synchronizing so that we're not,
Okay, can I ask you to hold that question? Because we'll get to that in 6 and 7, or 7 and 8. I agree that we should engage with the WQI advisory board about this. However, or in addition, we should alert them to the discussion we're having, but we should also tell them that we haven't rallied around the value and the price yet, and we're not going to come to them with a request until we think it's worth it, and we're not there yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so
It's just getting a sense of whether we feel like it's a receptive audience if we can dot all our I's, or are there some hiccups so that we're not keep kind of thinking, well, gee, that's a big number, well, we could get it there when, for whatever reason, it's not.
I believe, and if I'm wrong, somebody I'm sure will correct me. As far as the QAI we pushed it forward to the town board with the proviso that the town board was going to make sure that it was a legitimate, because in the old days, this would be a problem, you know, we had troubles aligning that, yes, this falls into what the WQI had to do, so. You know, we didn't say, yeah, it's good if it's legitimate.
Yeah. And I know we're mixing because there's other, but just trying, because part of that may be, I think the attorney has to opine on whether it's within the jurisdiction of what's allowed for WQI. And then maybe if he has questions, I'm not sure, Meg will be able to say this, you know, go to the advisory board at the state level, what have you. To the extent that we could even have not only QI, but the attorney, you know, if say, like, I think this is right up the middle, or this is going to be a question, like, you know, any of those things that we can answer now, even if it's not a formal request, I think is very helpful given the dollar amount, because it's going to help us make decisions.
The other study is I believe on the way, if not at the lawyers, you know, so if they come back and say,
Okay, so we're going to get,
no, that would mean something.
You got me.
we're going to get there.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to, yes, we're going to,
Yeah.
we're going to get there, because there is some information on all of that. Attend in November. All right. And Joe, will you circulate the 2016 study to all of us?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. All right. Joe, you're up again. Item number 5, the saltwater intrusion study update.
I don't have any updates to that end. I guess I'm waiting for the go-ahead to move forward with this effort, or to potentially remove it. I'm still seeking a formal proposal from USGS. That's on pause for the same reasons, but I was still seeking that proposal. And the purpose was to provide magnetic imaging in the nearshore areas to help us understand the impact in a snapshot fashion of lateral and upward saltwater intrusion during peak water use periods. The budget item for that was much smaller compared to what we've just discussed.
Correct. Okay.
You know, if that might be another, you know, I sure I had these tucked away in a binder, but the study that was done that Fred Stum did, something on the order of 10 years, I guess, right?
Yeah, I just found one from 2017 that seems to have all the background data too, so I'm going to send it to Joe and see if it's the right study.
Okay, so that might be another thing to get in hand, so that we'll be ahead of that. When they come back with the proposal, we'll have a better idea of what they did. He had a lot of, it was a very difficult project that Sol, when they had a lot of trouble in terms of how big the area that couldn't be developed. It was a battle.
Okay. You're next.
Well, just to be
Oh, sorry.
clear, I don't, it sounded like there was a question. I'm still in favor of continuing, as Joe said, I don't know if we're still pursuing this, or I'm in favor of continuing to pursue it. I think saltwater intrusion is as big an issue as, you know, contaminants, other contaminants, I think. And so I think we should continue to pursue it for now. And
All right, so this is going to come up in the budget discussion, so hold that thought, okay? Because all of this comes together in our budget request that we're talking about, and it's, and the costs are blowing out, and we need to take a view on prioritizing them. You're up next to the chloride testing.
I expected Dan Williams also to sign on, so I don't know. I'll give you my end of it and he can give his end of it. As you see, I just saw a customer out there before taking a sample container. And so I was going to say, we're going to wrap up that phase, but maybe not. I mean, it doesn't really bother anybody to leave those there. We put out the signs, I took them down right before the storm. There was one out in front here that I just noticed the other day is gone, so I don't know if it blew away or somebody took it off in caution, which is fine. But I'm leaving one at the dump exit where everybody will see it. So it doesn't hurt anybody right now. I understand from a conversation with Dan that he's gotten about 50 containers back. And for the library, I had about 70 instruction cards, and they were gone. They called me and said they were gone. So the library has probably distributed at least 70 containers, and there's probably another 30 or 40 missing here. So we have about 100 out. Getting a 50% response is not bad. Jessica, hats off to you for doing all the logistic ordering and things. She took the ball and got the containers and just wrapped up the testing kit order. I waited for to see what the response was, because the shipping on the testing kits is significant. It's hazardous reagent. So I wanted to package it into an economic quantity. So that's gone in. We're getting 90 tests, so there's some room to keep this open without not constrained.
So in terms of numbers, we've got 100 plus out, we think,
And
and we've gotten 50
Dan
back.
might have an updated number. I don't know what the
Okay.
current number is.
And we've got circa 50 back.
Yeah.
And we've got a capacity for 90.
We can always get more testing
Yeah.
kits, but right now we're set for 90. My idea will be that because there's a contact number, the homeowner will get their results texted to
Right.
them. Oh, there he is. He's not zooming in. He's zooming in through the door. Dan?
Supposed to come?
No, you're going to
good.
zoom on. Great,
Thank
Dan,
you
we're
for
just talking
joining us.
about this.
Okay.
So you have about, what, 50 now, you said?
About 60 samples.
Samples,
I
great.
did forget to check today, so
Yeah.
I got any over the weekend.
Yeah, I looked the other night at the, for the debate, and there was nothing in the box.
Right.
So that the weekend was zero.
We've put out messages for the school again because it didn't seem to go very well with the school community. I don't know why. I've given out two to teachers or families. So I still have
Yeah.
almost all of the vials that you gave me for the
Yeah.
school.
Yeah. Sorry, we're just talking about the results, getting the results back. Do you think it would be feasible for whatever student did the results to text the number back to the contact number?
Not a student, no.
No? Okay,
Yeah, I wouldn't put a student in contact with.
all right, so
Such.
so that's the next step, is to how to get the results back to them. I was thinking letting the student do it to give them some interaction, but
Right.
if you don't think that's wise, that's fine.
Well, I thought what we had originally planned on is some sort of spreadsheet.
Yeah, I was
Type in
gonna,
cell phone number, the results.
I'm concerned about the confidentiality of
Okay.
it. I don't have a better idea.
Right. I mean, I could send out the results by that, or we could use a school number to send out the results by that. But I would not want to put a minor in
Okay,
touch with.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you.
No, that's fine. So that's the next, that's the
All right,
next
but
piece.
we're underway.
Oh, it's going.
Definitely.
We're underway, and I want to thank you for handling this from the standpoint of the school and engaging the students in this, and it's a great community activity.
Very
And
excited.
it'll heighten awareness around the issues. It'll engage people, so it's like all the way around, it's great. So, but thank you for engaging with us on it.
No problem.
Okay.
Now, Pete, it's not really on the agenda, but Peter, you've been in touch with Peter Grand,
Yes.
and you know more about it than I did. Can you say anything about it?
Well, apparently there's also a fresh pond study going on. that has been going on for years. And they reached out to us, meaning the school, to see if we'd be able to look at some water samples to test for phosphorus, and also to go over a bunch of the results that they already have and such like that, to learn about the glacier lake and such. So right now we have it on that starting in January, we're going to be doing some education with the students. This will be after school, and then getting any of the results that would be available. And this will be a 7 through 12 activity, meaning that earth science, earth and space science deals with glacial, how the glaciers affected this area. So we'll definitely get those classes in, plus it's AP Environmental, plus my marine class. And then any science club kid that wants to become involved. So this is definitely something that we're excited about as well.
Okay, so the great thing about that in terms of public awareness is those children go home at night.
Yes.
And they're going to be asked, what did they do in school that day?
Yes.
And so it's going to precipitate a whole series of conversations around the dinner table. So it's not only engaging the students, it's engaging their families. And it's fabulous. Okay, so more ideas you have along these lines, keep going.
And Peter's arranged a loan of some kind of equipment. What, from P.O. Lombardo, what?
Right, there was some talk about that. I don't know, last we left it up was probably just test strips.
Oh,
Something very, very simple, because apparently most of the work has already been done, as kind of just like a confirmation of what we've already seen. And I don't know, the only issue that I heard was they don't know when the overturn starts within the pond. And so they were looking to see if they could find data on that, which would be great if the students could get data from February, March, when the overturn would start. But that's too early, I think, in the process to figure out who's diving, who's getting what, and where they're getting it from. So maybe this year's more education and next year is testing. I don't know.
Okay.
Lastly, for what it's
Yep.
worth, if we're struggling with how to get test results out, I'll text 30 people if you give me a list. I mean,
Yeah,
we can
that's-
get it done, you know.
We can split it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not,
Right.
it's just how to do it. But yeah, that's fine.
What we could do is we could come up with that Excel spreadsheet, send it to you all, and then if there was a way that the town could
Yep.
send the information out.
Yeah, that's what.
Get that students in.
Fair enough.
And if we have enough anonymity within a neighborhood, we'll do a
Right.
neighborhood summary, I guess. If we don't, we'll just do an island-wide summary. And you mentioned that maybe you want to have some students present some data. So we could put that on an agenda for here, and maybe if the town board would like to have them in, town board. Would you?
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a community.
They wanted to do a
Right.
presentation of.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
I
great.
agree. Okay, next item on the agenda is the center triangle water testing. Remember, we're doing this because when we did the nitrate testing in November of 2023, roughly 44% of those wells showed nitrate levels at substantially above what would expect for background levels, which in turn suggests septic contamination into those wells. Because there's no industry, there's no agriculture, like what else is it? And so the question is, what else has traveled with those nitrates into the wells? And is that water potable? That's why we're doing this. Then it becomes always a question of funding. And because of the budget pressures, and in fact, our budget request being so much higher than what it has been in the past, it was suggested that I go to the Water Quality Improvement Advisory Board and request funding, which I did a couple of weeks ago. And they recommended, they endorsed the testing program and said, subject to town board support, they would support the funding. there's a fairly complicated governmental process in terms of actually getting that support, getting that funding, because this funding request is outside the existing ordinances governing the WQI. And so the sequence of events is on October 28th at 1 o'clock, there'll be a town board work session about setting a public hearing on this question. On November 10th, the town board would set or not set the public hearing. And then on December 1, there would be a public hearing on the funding question. And on or after December 1, the town board could vote to authorize the use of WQI funds for the testing program. So those are the steps that would have to be taken over the next 6 to 8 weeks or so for the WQI funds to fund this testing program. I will go to each one of those events and follow that, so I own that. I've got those things on my calendar.
A public hearing is required for any allocation out of WQI funds, Meg?
So, as I understand it, the town board has passed some ordinances that authorized use of WQI funds for certain purposes, like IA systems and so forth. So WQI funds are getting spent under those blanket ordinances, but there is no such ordinance for this. And so that's why we have to go through this process.
Gotcha.
And I'm perfectly fine with it. I just wanted to understand it because I didn't want it to stall somewhere. So I will participate in, and I'll be before the town board on the 28th. I'll be before the town board in the audience to explain this on the 28th. I'll be before the town board on the 10th when they are asked to set the hearing, and I will come to the public hearing.
Good thing it's on the fast track.
Well, this is it's public funds. In the course of all this back and forth, there's been a lot of discussion about process and how we're actually going to do this, run the testing program. There's been feedback, a suggestion that we actually proceed and test a couple of the zones first and run them all the way through the process to make sure that the process works and to make sure that we're actually getting the data that we expect to get and that we can make sense of the reporting. So I met with the town engineer and Meg about a week ago, and we selected 3 of the 13 zones to do first. There were a couple of zones right around here, and then there was one where we had a higher incidence of wells at nitrates with a higher action level, and then there's another zone further north from here. So 3 of the 13 zones. And the town engineer is going to randomly select 50% of the properties in each one of those zones. And then ultimately contact the property owners. And the messaging basically will be, the town is following up on the November 2023 testing, which indicated presence of contaminants that possibly originate from septics in your neighborhood. The town wants to know if other contaminants possibly associated with septic discharge are present, where those contaminants are present, and in what concentrations they're present, and whether those concentrations render that water non-potable. This following up testing program is designed to test 50% of the wells in your immediate area. Your property has been randomly selected. The town is requesting your voluntary participation. If you do participate, you will get the test results. The test will be conducted full panel potability test by the Suffolk County Department of Health. The town will not see your test results. The town will only see the results by zone or your neighborhood. You'll pay $100 for the test, and once the town learns from Suffolk County Department of Health that your well has actually been tested and that's complete, the town will pay you back for your $100 back. So that's the message that's going to go out to the property owners who are selected randomly. Now, there are a number of questions about this, like, gee, I didn't get chosen. I want to get chosen. Well, if you, the town is doing this for its purposes. The town is not doing this to find out what's in your particular well. The town's trying to understand the extent of contamination around the area. So Meg and Joe and I have kind of worked this out and scripted it. And that's generally how we're going to be proceeding. The other advantage of doing this on a phased basis like this is that 250 tests, which is what ultimately this program is going to roll out to, represents about half of what Suffolk County, of all the tests Suffolk County does in a year. So they'd be delighted to have this spread out over a couple of years, just simply from the standpoint of their managing their workload. So that's how we're going forward with this. Comments?
Can you just, were there, I mean, it makes sense to some degree, but were there, I'm looking, what were the concerns about the process? Were there some specific ideas of where there might be hiccups, or was it just a sense of like, let's do it? Because I'm curious on the specific things that you mentioned, like, are we getting, like, what were, I mean, we know what the panel test is, so don't we have, I'm not sure where there's potential issues with the process in there. And so I'm just curious if what I could be missing that somebody else saw about.
I think one question was, the WAC did all this testing focused on nitrates 2 years ago. And it was around nitrates and potability and whether the wells on nitrates were exceeding the potability standards. 6 or 8 wells, they exceeded the potability standards. But the real finding that we didn't expect was the percentage of wells that were showing nitrates, sure, under the potability limits, in other words, better than the potability limits, but much higher than one would normally expect to see as a background level. That's what's become the issue. And so the question was, whoa, that wasn't really anticipated. So that's caused people to ask more questions about exactly what kind of information we're trying to get out of this second round of testing and why. That's quite legitimate. Those queries are quite legitimate. So that's one kind of source of questions. Another source of questions is that we didn't know the results, the town didn't know the results of the individual well tests. So we couldn't reach out to the homeowners who had issues and actually help them. And we didn't know because we didn't want to, the town didn't know because the town didn't want to know, because that protects that homeowner from having that data out in the public via a Freedom of Information Act request. So there's a good answer for why the town didn't know. But it nonetheless people have asked, why didn't we know? How are we helping these people, and so forth. The answer to that question was, we didn't know because we didn't want to have any privacy issues. And everybody who did get their wells tested, they know their own results. So they can come and talk to the town engineer, they can come talk to, they can find talk to a water treatment specialist and so forth to get advice. So they know what their results are. We don't know what their individual results are. And then I think there was the question of maybe we ought to crawl before we walk here and do this on a phased basis to make sure that we're getting the information that's good and valid and useful before we sink $25,000. Let's maybe test 60 wells, 100 wells, rather than all 250 wells, so that we can learn something in the process of actually how we do it. I think those are all very legitimate inputs. And so Joe and I and Meg sat to kind of consider all that and work out this program. I've had a couple of interactions with Suffolk County on this. So we're trying to respond to what we're hearing.
I get it. I don't want to belabor the point. I guess none of what you said, I would wonder what in getting back results would make you say, I'm not going to do any more testing, or what would I change about it? And I don't want to belabor the point. I just hate delaying. We talked about this so long. Now we're elongating what we see as a huge priority. And are they because people just get uncomfortable, or is there tangible? And maybe
So I can help answer the question.
Yeah.
So part of it is that we are limited in the capacity that the health department has. So if we can focus zone by zone, we can get all the sample results for that zone in a timely fashion around the same time, right? So we're not going to be picking from here and there and everywhere, and you're just going to get kind of a scatter shot in time. At least for each zone, you'll get timely responses for that area. So they might be different times, but it's consistent for that time. Because if we try to do all of the zones at once, the health department won't be able to handle that flow.
No, I mean,
So if we
that's
give them,
different. Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
chunks of 30 or 40 at a time, zone by zone, it's manageable, we'll get efficient results, it'll be done timely, and we'll be able to handle the outreach to that area. Otherwise, if we try to do everyone all at once, it's too many people to juggle. So zone by zone made sense.
And what do we think the staging then would be? Are we trying to do them at the same time of year so that then pushes the next phase into the next year? Or how are we thinking about what that phasing would look like? Do we have a sense?
Not sure yet. Suffolk County's reaction on the timing of the different tests doesn't make that much difference. So if we do the 3 zones and we can get all done by May next year,
Yeah.
then we'll just keep going.
Just keep rolling through. It'll depend on the demand that they have. So if they have a lighter demand, they'll be able to do more for us.
Right.
So some of it's gonna have to, be flexible with that.
That's very understandable. I just hate to see any elongating of the process and that when we've been banging the table or whatever, but we can manage that based on their needs and us staying right on top of it.
And some of it'll depend on the responsiveness of the community. So
Yeah.
if we have a
You
zone
don't
and
get
people
enough.
are eager
Yeah.
to do it, then they'll turn around quickly.
Yep.
If we have a zone and people aren't as eager or responsive, then, the first door we knock on may say no. It may take a couple rounds of knocking to get
Yeah,
the
thank
numbers
you.
that we want.
I get it.
Okay? All right, so that's where that stands. It's on the record as to how we're proceeding with this. I'm learning that to operate in this role, it's very important to be crystal clear about what we're doing and why, and I'm totally okay with that. Okay, any comments about that topic? All right, and I appreciate all the input that I've gotten on this. I'm a bit like a horse with a bit in his teeth about this. I'm not going to let this go. But I appreciate the input and the suggestions that people have provided. Okay, now the budget. I sent you an email last night, and you have a copy of the budget document, draft discussion document that I attached to that email. So you can see in the middle of the page, column entitled Modified Budget, totals $56,000 change. That was what was approved in 2025. If you go all the way over to the right, ignore those interim columns about what's been spent so far and balance and so forth, balance available. Go to Department Proposed. And you can see that if we add up all of our requests, including the price increase associated with the USGS 10-year study, just the first year of it, we get to 150,000. That's a big increase. And I came up with two ways of dealing with that increase. One, option A, was to request and obtain funding from the WQI for the center triangle testing and the USGS baseline study. If we were able to do that, and the net general fund request from the taxpayers goes back down to 56,000, which is almost identical to where we were last year. The coincidence is striking to me, but that's the math. Option B is we cut something. We think, I'm optimistic that we're going to get to 25,000 from the WQI for the center triangle testing. And then we cut something. And I had discussed with Joe what he'd cut. And so I put the MRI for the saltwater intrusion on that list. And that gets us down to around 100. I'm not necessarily proposing that. I think when I was asked by the supervisor to update our budget request, I said, we gotta have a meeting about this. We gotta have a discussion about it because it's a WAC request. It's not the chairman's request. So, and of course, the other thing we can do is say, no, we want 150,000. And that we might get it, or that might result in someone else making that prioritization decision for us. I'd rather, if something's going to be cut, I'd rather have the decision about what needs to be cut around this table rather than around somebody else's table. So, thoughts?
I'd prefer nothing to be cut at this stage, and I would rely heavily on WQI inquiries to get a sense of whether that's going to be fertile ground or not. And without being pessimistic, I suspect if you put in a number, or we put in a number like that, someone will make a decision that that's not going to work for town budget because of other priorities and pressures on using reserves and increases and all the rest of it. And so, I don't know all the nuances of the QI, but it would, on its face, seem like all of these fit like right within the remit of where that money should be used. And we should be trying to make sure that we can, get as much access as we can.
Okay, and
So it's a timing issue of where they are in the budget and how much due diligence we can do in the interim, because if, it seems difficult to say we want 150, but we're really confident that the QI is going to approve the 10-year study. And the lawyer believes that that's within the remit of WQI funds. Why are we going to put them through that painful? Like, we want to double back up to make sure that it's going to be funded like that. I think that's going to be painful. Does that make sense? Am I clear? Anyone?
Yeah, I want to put in the premise of this discussion, though. The premise of this discussion is we get to the point where we believe that the 10-year baseline study is necessary as now conceived.
Yep.
Okay, so that's a premise going in, which is to be discussed.
That's the way I'm operating at the moment, yeah.
Fine. Okay, so your view is hang tight with 150 and push for the WQI funding on the two testing programs. Bear in mind, we basically got their support for the small one.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the USGS study.
Yeah.
When I went before them. I've got my tail a little bit between my legs on that, but, so, okay, that's your view. Other views?
Yeah, at the risk of becoming known as Mr. Saltwater Intrusion, I'd like to keep the MRI study.
Okay,
I think it will tell us things.
okay. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a hydrologist, so what are you really looking for out of that study?
The degree to which we're getting saltwater intrusion that's below the 250 limit, and how prevalent could it be around this island? I suspect that it's more prevalent than we know.
Okay, particularly during the peak times of the
I
year.
don't even think it's seasonal. I think it's in. We should be cognizant of
Okay.
how much in it could be. It might not be affecting your potability, but it might be there.
So,
Which is still a health issue. It's not for drinking.
yep,
But it does have other health impacts.
And I think it, at least as I understand it, would give you a sense of the vulnerability, because I think what you're referring to, it's not just what you overpump, so you're pulled. It's the landward move of the saltwater boundary that, because of whether it's global warming, high tides, all of those kinds of things that could influence the way we think about how we're building near shore, or what controls we're putting on near shore use of water and the like.
okay,
It's not so much overpumping, it's the lateral.
Yeah.
okay,
It's the
okay.
lateral movement.
Greg? Interesting, because you also sit on the WQI advisory board.
Yeah, well, and I think salt water intrusion is a very difficult aspect, because compared to nitrates and septic waste in the water, we have technology as an individual homes basis. You can if everybody in it, and if 50% of the people in some of these zones get their their systems in, IA systems, you're gonna wind up with, we have the ability to fix that issue as time
The
goes on.
nitrates issue.
Salt issue.
The nitrate.
Oh, nitrate.
Nitrate, if all of those systems, old conventional septic systems, if they were all back to IA systems, that's the technology that can resolve this, and it stays an individual homeowner's responsibility.
Right.
The saltwater intrusion is a different character, because we don't really have a technology that can say, all right, for this region, for this area, this neighborhood, we don't have, individual properties probably don't have, what, if you're flushing your toilet and there's no salt in it, it has no effect on whether or not you're gonna have salt in your area. And so I think that it becomes an issue of infrastructure that may become necessary in the future, and presumably that infrastructure is either gonna be individual RO systems or some other manner of way, which is presumably treated water. It would take a very long time to get that repaired, to get that in place. And if this is gonna, and I put the first word there is if this is going to help provide background information, knowledge, actionable resource that says, okay, we know that there's salt water, we've confirmed it, and we have some numbers around it. we have to move forward and start to think about how, whether it's a zoning change, whether it's a water district, whether it's figuring out a way to pump the salt effluent back out into the sound. You know, I don't know how how we can get the salt resolved in people's homes. Because even right now, if you say, okay, I'm gonna have a whole house salt system, I forget where this was recently, in the last couple of weeks, talking to somebody, and they said, yeah, it's just, you know, my copper pipes, it's like they're gone constantly, you know, the copper pipes, the salt is eating away their pipes. So from that standpoint, I think if the MRI will provide the information that can start that dialogue, I think it would be something that definitely would be a good idea.
And it was mentioned last night. It might be that, I'm sorry, well, cover your ears, but, you know, irrigating a lawn might not be feasible.
Okay, so I read the room, and I'm hearing from the committee that that needs to stay in, and that our budget request needs to be in the 150 range, and we need to go after the WQI funding to try and bring that number down as much as we can. That's what I'm hearing from the group. And that's fine. This is why we had the discussion, because it's a WAC budget request. It's not my budget
Well,
request.
just for the water testing, the 25, you might encumber it this year, but you're not going to spend it.
Fine. So that might, let's say that's down to, that
You
might be
could slice
12.
it in a
Yeah.
third or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
If
You could,
If you needed to fine point the number.
And again, as always, as long as the regulations surrounding the funds, the WQI funds, that is an
Yes.
appropriate spend.
Yes.
That's,
There is that, yes, I agree with you in terms of timeline, but I'd be careful of it's 15 and then 20 or something. So we're going to approve the 15 because you get a new town board in and then they say, we don't want to spend the other 20. So I'd rather show them that
You're going
they
to
approve the whole thing, but it's, you know, over, you know, what, that kind of thing. Just try to avoid
okay.
easy kill shots.
It's not a home run anyway.
Yeah.
Leave it in. I'm not saying you take it out.
And as I said, on the risk of being repetitive, which I'm sure I am, is not only a like conversation with WQI that's not a formal request, but also to what extent is there due diligence on, they say they're fine with it, but you need a town lawyer to say, do I need whatever, like we can do that now. We can ask them to look at it.
Yes. So where we are on that, the feedback I've gotten on that question is the town went to the town attorney. Town attorney came back and said, yes, the purposes of WQI, the authorized purposes of WQI funding has broadened. And yes, it has paid for water testing in the past. But you might go talk to this newly constituted advisory board. Anyway, my concern about that is that that's just going to take a lot of time because that board's not fully constituted yet. And it's got a lot of other questions in front of it. And so given that well water testing has been approved for WQI funding in the past, under the old, more restrictive legislation, I'm requesting the town board to approve it because the authorizing legislation has broadened. So we'll see whether I'm successful. But I think the WQI advisory board was on board with that.
I mean, the town board and the town attorney are going to have their own risk management of that question. My bias, and I've done a lot of legislation and regulation before, is kind of, you know, if there's nothing shouting at you that it's not permitted, be careful of like, do you need to ask that question? if you have a very reasonable means to
Right.
make a reasonable conclusion.
And I think we have that reasonable means, so that's where it stands.
Did the attorney say that paying the homeowner for the $100 is okay?
So where we were, if it's authorized, it's okay. The issue, the reason we're doing it that way is that if the town pays Suffolk County to do the test,
Yeah, no, I understand.
that
No, it's
issue
just-
raises issues for them.
I understand.
Yeah.
No, I was just wondering about the
Yeah.
paying the homeowner for a test that the town doesn't get much of anything back. You know,
Well, the town's getting the zonal
Yeah, I
information.
know they are. I know they are. But the attorney's okay with it, it's fine.
Okay.
I don't want it to short circuit the thing.
All right, it's three, let's see. Is there any other business to come before this committee?
Just the quick summary, which I was just stating as a sidebar before, is that we're progressing the irrigation information. We are still in the kind of fact-finding stage of talking to some experts and the like, and consistent with what we said about engagement. Meg, you can tell me whether you guys have started to reach out to kind of irrigation guys and landscapers, because we plan to meet with you sometime in the coming weeks. I don't know if the outreach has happened yet.
Because Mary Ellen's been away.
Okay.
So as soon as Mary Ellen.
But rest assured that that is going to happen, and that's part of our process before we really put pen to paper. So
Okay. Would you like to make a report on that? Just an update on that at the next meeting? Or, okay. All right. Would any members of the public like to make any comments about Howard?
Yes, the wells that the Suffolk County Water Authority had drilled at Satcham's Woods and at Wade's Beach, when are we gonna get a report on that, what their findings? They were going down to, that's part of saltwater intrusion when they hit saltwater. The one in Satcham's was supposed to go down like 1,000 feet, I believe. When are we gonna get that report to the town?
Well, considering USGS is shut down right now, probably not for a little while. I think they went down 1,300 feet in Satcham's, is what I heard. I'll have to confirm that with Joe, he's not on anymore. But those two wells are part of a larger Long Island-wide saltwater intrusion study. So there'll be consistent data coming from that over the years too, so it's not just this first time. But they finished the drilling pretty much just before everything went to shutdown. So it'll take a while before they get the information back to us.
Yeah, because I went down and looked at the one in Satcham's Woods, and there's a green well, a yellow well and a red well. I just was wondering why two different wells.
One is a shallow well and one is the deep well. So in order for them to drill the deep well, they needed water. So they put in the shallow well to get the water to do the deep well.
Well, that makes sense.
So you have two testing wells there.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anything else, Howard? Walter?
Good.
Thank you. Anyone on Zoom? All right. Anything else for the good of the order? Motion to adjourn?
motion.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Do you recall which zones